Korean Culture Center invite you, and we open a new program, Unlock Korean History, K History Special.
Yes.
So what is your perspective on Korean history through Korean literature, film, and dramas?
Yes. I think that, once again, dramas or films or screen culture in general has the ability to engage people. So they start to get interested by watching that, and they want to know more. So once again, it's opening up that kind of interest. And there are a lot of good films, a lot of good dramas that are, from an historian's point of view, quite solid. And it doesn't matter if it's slightly fictional, as long as it's not fantasy. But then I think it's very useful to use that in terms of teaching. And a lot of these films or dramas, of course, they do a lot of research into it. So you have all of this kind of content, and you can zoom in on, you can focus on certain aspects of Korean society, of Korean culture, a lot of various aspects you can just draw out of this. So that's what I'm trying to do. So when here at the Cultural Center, so I chose the film Sado, about Sado Seja. And once again, there's so much interesting you can talk about. So I spent one of the lectures just talking about the background and then what's going on at court, bringing in the kind of politics and just trying to understand. So Yeongjo, why in the end did he have to do what he did? And then in the second lecture, just bringing out cultural and social themes that you could see in it. And the role of education, in particular the role of education of the crown prince would be important. Just Confucianism and what that meant for being a king, being a sagacious Confucian king. Sado Seja got interested in Taoism and then shamanism. So just looking at those kind of other religions that in a sense had a kind of slightly conflictual relationship with the dominant Confucian ideology. And we have all of these very important women at court as well. So just understanding, so what were the role of women in the Joseon court. So a lot of interesting kind of themes that you could look in by using one film only. And there are a lot of interesting films or dramas that you could use. Dramas are more difficult because of the length. It's easier with the film.
And then I just in Yeongjo is one of the very important period because and there are many stories about the King Yeongjo and Sado Seja and Jeongjo, but Jeongjo developed the Gyujangak. So he is one of the king who strongly believed the power of intellectual ones. And I know just he has a lot of interest and just about a kind of recent, at the time, very contemporary new and science informations from Europe and from many other places.
Yes. For me, as I said in the beginning, my research interest is really into the relationship between the state and the people. Of course, that would be also with the king and the people, and both Yeongjo and Cheongjo are famous for how they try to reformulate the position of the relationship between the king and the people. And those kind of areas that I'm interested in, so the legal system in Yeongjo is famous for prohibiting various forms of torture and other forms of legal reforms that we can see as well. Or in terms of famine relief, that system became much more elaborate during the Cheongjo reign. And it introduced really interesting policies for orphans as well, King Cheongjo. So those kind of research issues that I'm interested in. It's really interesting to look at both Yeongjo and Cheongjo, and also trying to explain them from a more kind of political historical background as well, why these kings had this attitude, why they wanted to, as I said, reformulate the relationship between the king and the people.
But personally, in Jeongjo has a very struggling from his own life because the father and mothers and their grandfather. How do you kind of, in the history, always sometimes history is very state and people, but sometimes the history is very personal story. So how can you interpret in Jeongjo's time and from his personal life point of life?
I mean, so the film Sado, I mean, it follows very much Han Jong-nok, so the memoirs of
yeah.
Haegyang-Hongshi. And in that we do get the very personal story. Of course, focusing mainly on Sado Seja, but we do get an understanding of the personal story of Cheongjo as well. So I actually think the film does that very well.
Yeah.
You get that very personal story from the film. And in my lectures, then I just try to provide a bigger picture, understanding why we had this personal tragic drama developing at that time.
Yeah. Hanjungrok is one of the most very sad but very beautiful and text written by a kind of woman writer.
Yes.
Yes. And could you please tell me more about your kind of impression or your ideas or your opinion about Hanjungrok?
Han Jong-nok.
Yeah.
So I mean, I did my degrees in Korean studies at Stockholm University, and of course there as well there was this focus on the language. We don't only study contemporary Korean, but also looking at Joseon period Korean, etc., etc. So I first looked at Han Jong-nok from that point of view. So we went into the original text and trying to understand just the kind of linguistics behind it. So quite an in-depth research into it, but at the same time, just getting fascinated by the story we have it. It's not only about Sado Seja, it's about Haegyang-Hongshi as well. As a young girl, being married into the royal family, having to adjust to those kind of conditions. And of course, later on as well, with the death of Cheongjo and her kind of emotions surrounding that. So there's a lot of emotional content. It's a fascinating piece of work. And for a bigger audience, of course, fortunately, we have that in a very good English translation as well. So not only modern Korean translations, but also English translation.
And on that day, how was the kind of audience reaction about your talk and about the Sado Seja film?
Of course, they had questions about how could this happen. It is kind of extraordinary for a king to ask his son to step into a rice chest and locking the rice chest. And I've tried to explain, of course, why Yeongjo felt that need, but they were just interested in why specifically that. And they're just trying to once again explain it from a kind of legal historical point of view. What kind of options would they have or Yeongjo have to deal with the situation, trying to explain it that way. But then a lot of questions just in general about that period, about Korean history. And that is a fascinating part of the Korean wave or Hallyu, is that young people, they get interested in Korean pop music. But then they develop all these other kind of interests as well. So it seemed from some of the questions that these students, young people, were quite knowledgeable of various parts of Korean history, because they go by themselves, they go onto the internet and they find things. So they wanted just me to develop further about a lot of different aspects of Korean history. And so we had a long and interesting kind of discussion afterwards.
Yeah, and this after I arrive in London, I feel many K-pop fans and have interest in Korean history and Korean literature and just in many other and Korean cultures. So I think it is right time to share our ideas.
Yes, yes, I always make that argument as well. So we should provide for these young people that are interested in Korea all these different aspects of Korea. So it might be, yes, that they get to Korea through popular culture, be that music, dramas, or webtoons and these kind of areas. But we should, in terms of what we provide as scholars from Korean studies point of view, provide much a broader palette, a lot of things that they could get more information from. So we shouldn't focus on those areas that their initial interest is in, but rather help them to develop broader and deeper interest and understanding.
And when I just think about Joseon period, I often just in my mind the Sejong period is pop up in my mind, and the second period is Yeongjo and Jeongjo. And when I think about the Sejong, Sejong is the Renaissance, 15th century, and just invented Korean Hangul.
Yes.
And Yeongjo, Jeongjo has more a kind of an enlightenment age.
Yeah.
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 So there is something different aspect. One thing, just Sejong is the Renaissance period, and Yeongjo, Jeongjo is more like Enlightenment age. So do you have any kind of just plan to go to Sejong period with the films and?
Uh, I'd be very happy. I must admit that off the top of my head, I'm not sure which film I would use for the Sejong period. But there are a lot of interesting things to talk about on Sejong. I mean, we're talking about very different societies. Once again, 15th century Korea and 18th century Korea. So once again, that opens up for a lot of interesting discussions as well, not only on Sejong and his policies, but once again, society and the relationship and what was going on in Korea at that time. Yeah, so I'd be very happy to talk about the Sejong period
Sejong
as well. In my own research, a little bit about his ideas about legal system,
Legal system.
as well. So he was also quite critical of torture.
Yeah.
And during his reign, there was a lot of discussions on how to deal with theft and robbery. That is really, really interesting. So I've done a little bit of research, but not so much.
Yeah. And now, just the students, you mentioned the students access information and materials of research through the internet and data. And would you please kind of introduce and show us some kind of library and some materials, and just if anyone have interested to learn more about Korea and here in London.
Yeah, I mean, SOAS library is the biggest collection in the UK of Korea-related material, and we've been collecting material for a very long time. And it's an open, so it's a national research library, so anybody could go there and access the material. And our website is very good, so you can easily find information about those kind of materials that we do have. So I certainly recommend people to have a look if they're interested. It's easily accessible, and whatever kind of niche interest you might have, you can find them. And we do have like North Korean texts from North Korea, and like old Korean novels, and all various kind of them. And we do have a little bit in our old collection as well, a little bit of Korea-related material, which of course is more difficult to access, but if you're interested, it's possible as well. Yeah.
Oh wow! It's just I want to go there and study more
Please
about.
come.
Yeah. And also I know just SOAS has a Korean Studies Center.
Yes, yes. So the way we teach and do research about Korea at SOAS is that on the one hand we have a department where we do focus on the language teaching, but then also other aspects of Korea that are taught, mainly history and literature. But then also in other departments we have colleagues who work on Korea as well.
Yeah.
Art history, politics, a little bit of music. So what we have, the Center of Korean Studies, that's for everybody at SOAS to do something with Korea. So the center does not have the teaching, it's more research-based, and there's kind of space for everybody with an interest in Korea to share information. And we arrange seminars and conferences that are open to the public as well. So we are the kind of window as well towards the surrounding society, the center. So then, yeah.
Wow. Now, just if anyone have interest in Korea and just want to know more about in Korea, and go to library as well, and then attend some lectures.
And please do get on the mailing list for the Center of Korean Studies. You get information about these open events that we have in conferences and lectures on various aspects of Korea.
Yeah, it is good information. Now it is we can say this 21st century is the age of this age.
Yeah.
Would you please tell a kind of some one words how the next generation develop their interest in about Korea, or just developed a kind of passion about Korean studies?
Yeah. So the internet, I think that's a kind of double-edged sword. There's so much information out there, so much easier to find information. But at the same time, there's a lot of information that is not so reliable out there as well. So that's an important message that we keep telling our students. Yes, please do go out on the internet, but have a look. Okay, so what is the source? Who is telling you this information? That is very, very important. I think Korean institutions have done a very good job in making things available online. The kind of digitalization projects that we can see from Kyujangak or all these kind of various other institutions. It's really helping people to go and find source material. A lot of it might be translated as well into the modern time Korean. So that's make it much easier. And as I said, for us, I think we have an important role in guiding then the students to make sure that they go to the right sites to find that information. And yeah, it is really encouraging that it becomes so much easier. If I compare when I started to do my PhD research, and you have to go to the libraries and you have to find the books and you make the paper photocopies and everything, but these days so much is available online.
Yeah, it is quite good point. What is the kind of good information, or where from this information comes from where?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at Korean history, there wouldn't be that much disinformation, but it's just about how reliable is that information that you're getting.
Yeah, I think it is one of the very important key in when we research in Korean studies in 21st century.
Yeah.